So I have to give you guys a little bit of backstory. I can't remember why Eric and I were looking up Mallard Medical Instagram. And we were like, what are these gorillas and this hippopotamus? No, it wasn't a rhino or something. Like, what is happening? This can't be a Reading company. And so we just called, because that's the kind of things we do in the office. Go like, tell me what is happening here. Like, what do you guys do? So I've gotten to know the AB medical story and the Mallard medical story a little bit more, and it just continues to fascinate me. I think it's so impressive, the progress that you guys have made in an industry that isn't always sexy to talk about. So I think it's going to be a really fun conversation. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So start for me, tell me the story about kind of what brought you into entrepreneurship, what that process kind of looked like for you, and where are you now, how you got into, how AB Medical, Mallard Medical, came into being.
So we do have to go back to like the lemonade stand.
You were an Avon lady too?
I was an Avon lady. No, I did the essential oils, but no, I think for me, my dad was a college professor who taught marketing, so business was table talk. And not so much doing business, but talking about business, because he was more of that philosopher. And, we talk about Steve Jobs and the iPod release and, Starbucks and what they were doing. So I was always very curious about business process. I wanted to work with the best businesses. I pounded the pavement to work for Apple and Starbucks. They wouldn't hire me till I was 18. So on my 18th birthday, I got a job at both. Worked 8 hours at Starbucks, got an hour off, worked 8 hours at Apple. So I just had this insatiable desire to be in business from a very young age. And as fate would have it, I graduated smack dab in the middle of the Great Recession. And so all the jobs that were available were Starbucks and Target. And I'm like, well, I have a degree and I kind of did that. So what do I do? So I went to China and I started manufacturing wooden snowboards and snow skis. So the Chinese economy was doing much, much better. There's a lot more jobs. They wanted Americans to come and help them figure out how to break into the US economy. So I did that for what I thought would be multiple years. It was 6 months. I got E. coli. It was not fun. I quickly came back to Indiana to get better, and that was odd because the sort of healing process is very much like mono, like you're asleep for 16 hours a day. So there wasn't a lot that I could do. And so for 6 months, I just listened to podcasts. There was a podcast called Mixergy. A guy named Andrew Warner would interview entrepreneurs, and I was obsessed. I mean, the Dropbox story and all of these social media companies. This was like 2012. There's a huge new way of doing business online. I was very curious about that. And I sort of hustled my way back to LA where I was living at the time, or prior to going to China, and got a job at an ad agency. And it was just a consulting job, but I had shown up. I knew the founder. He was really scatterbrained and busy. He pulled me into a meeting, and in the meeting they were struggling to figure out what to do, and I kind of tapped him on the shoulder. I was like, can I pitch? And he's like, this is the VP of marketing at Cox Communications. Why not? And so I pitched him a blog and a social media idea, and they went for it, and they landed a $10 million deal, and I got a job. So that was pretty cool. And just kind of stumbled out of that into figuring out, okay, there's this new world of online education. I want to do something in that. I had at something very similar to this, I met my co-founder, who is a technical co-founder. We started a company called CodeBox, and we developed learning management systems. And this was a huge wave in 2012, 13, 14. And we helped small and medium-sized businesses get training online, whether that was employee training or customer training, all sorts of custom instances. And I sold that company in 2015. I took a year off to kind of settle down and figure out what I wanted to do next. And the thing that kept coming up was, you should be a venture capitalist. You should be a private equity guy. And you can read all the books you want about that and still not figure out how to jump into it. So I figured that, like anything, the best way to learn is to do. So I found a group that was in Southlake, Texas, and they had an office in the Bay Area, and I asked them if I could just work for free. And I said, hey, I'll work for free for a year. I just want to learn the business. And they said, great. They had needed a junior partner to come in and help them, so I did that. Quickly realized I was not a venture capitalist or a private equity guy. Like, I love people, and I had a really, really hard time looking at them as like a number in a spreadsheet. So it was interesting, but at the same time, I felt my soul slowly dying. And during that time, I had moved up here to work with some guys here in Reading that were doing real estate. They had an investment in Anderson in a medical device manufacturing company. And I jumped into a fractional executive role during COVID because they needed leadership, and then just fell in love with it from there. So actually that happened right before COVID, like 2018, 2019, but COVID really ramped it up. And it was helpful to have that international training, understanding China, understanding how business was done abroad, because it allowed me to negotiate things like tariff trade. We're going to ship that product to Thailand because we have better trade with Thailand than we do directly with China. It's funny how that's actually really useful right now. So these experiences continue to pay dividends. But in 2021, my partner and I, who were running the other company, came across, well, he had previously worked for AB Medical, and the owners were good friends of ours. Dwight and Ken were, ready to retire, and they were tired. That's not a disrespectful thing. They just were like, we don't want to figure out a post-COVID world. Like, this was insane. We're going to hang it up, but the business is doing okay, and would you guys like to take a shot at it? And we said, yeah, absolutely. We'd love to jump in. And Mallard, this is where Mallard comes in. Mallard was there, but it wasn't really there. Like, I was like, what's this thing in the corner, this big contraption? And said, oh, it's a Mallard. You'll sell 2 a year and pay the PG&E bill. And that was fine, because I wasn't really buying the company for that. I was buying it for its ability to create capital equipment. So the idea was, our sister company at the time created disposables. Disposables generally run on capital equipment. And so I wanted to have both capabilities to grow into the future. And so, but the Mallard thing, I used the Bob Ross quote, it was a happy accident. So the first year, I kind of looked at it, and it had this website that looked like it was made in '93. It was still selling a couple, like, passively. I'm like, this is crazy. So I refreshed the brand, refreshed the website, did some basic sales and marketing, quickly doubled the revenue, and then doubled again the next year. And I was like, I need a team. Hired a team, doubled again, and it just continued to snowball after that. So that's the quick version, but we can go into a lot of that.
Is there something that you can identify that a problem in your own life that you were kind of trying to solve? Like, thinking through from childhood through this entrepreneurial journey and building businesses in that process?
I think if there's any problem that I'm trying to solve is, I don't know if I'd phrase it as a problem. What excites me, what drives me, is figuring out something that worked in this industry and then applying it in a different industry and seeing a force multiplier, like an exponential effect. I don't refer to myself as an entrepreneur, actually. I'm a small business owner, because I know entrepreneurs that have this weird ability to, like, put their head into the ether and pull something down that, like, previously didn't exist. Like, I don't have that strength, but I'm really good at going, okay, these sort of patterns in web development and social media have not been applied to manufacturing. Let's apply those and see what happens. And I've done that time and time again, and it's paid dividends. So if there's a problem I'm solving, it's trying to arbitrage or fill the gap from what's working in one industry into the next industry.
So still innovation.
Still innovation, definitely.
Yeah,
I'm entrepreneurial, that's for sure. But I don't know if I'm an entrepreneur. We'll see.
Yeah. What was a decision that you made early on that cost you either time, money, a big piece of?
I think when you're coming up and you're looking for mentors, there comes a part of the journey where a mentor might not be a mentor. And I think I was very naive about partnerships, and I was very naive about people. And I think there's a term that I've heard Naval Ravikant say, you want to play long-term games with long-term people. So for everyone here, if you're in a place where you're trying to synthesize and understand and unpack a partnership, are you playing the same game, and are you going to play it on the same time horizon? If I would have asked myself those questions, I think I would have had a lot less pain in certain chapters of my life.
Yeah. It's just a learning process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was there anything really specific that you can identify that you needed to change in yourself in order to become or get to where you are today with the business, with the, industry?
Yeah, I think it comes back to the ego, pride, and not necessarily arrogance, that side of the ego, but feeling like I'm the only one who can do this job. And then realizing like you're not, and you can let go, and maybe a system, maybe process, maybe AI can actually do it better. And that's something that I'm constantly wrestling with and going through that cycle over and over. And as you elevate as a business leader, it seems to be a similar problem, but sometimes with a lot more zeros or a lot more people behind it, but it's more or less the same thing. So
Yeah. Can you think back to a time in business and maybe just like describe it for us where everything looked fine externally, or everything looked like really successful from the outside, that was just a point where things were just an immense struggle?
Yes, actually, at the tail end of my previous company, CodeBox, things were going really well, but I was in this process of having a much bigger vision than my partners. And while the cash was good and the business is good and the revenue was good, realizing that it was time to sell, because my partner, and I say this respectfully, but certain web developers, I would refer to them, and I mean this in a sincere way, they're code poets. Like, they're passionate about the code, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're passionate about the business. And so I was passionate about the business, and I could see that there was a ceiling on how far we would go as a team. And so I was really struggling with that because I love them as humans. I love their families, and it was excruciating to consider a future that didn't involve them. But after a series of months, I'll never forget the feeling of release when I had the conversation of like, this isn't working, guys. We need to go. And what's really cool is right after that is the season where I met my wife, and then I got into private equity. I had that whole journey, and so many beautiful things came out of it. And if I wouldn't have had that ending, those new beginnings wouldn't have happened, or maybe wouldn't have happened in the same way. So it was excruciatingly painful, but I'm so grateful that I moved through that process.
I think it's such an important thing to keep in mind in business, that there is an element of business that needs to just be about business, right? And I think that for a lot of founders, that's one area that's a pretty easy place to get stuck on or struggle with, is the emotional attachment to the process, or the emotional attachment to the situation and the relationships and stuff like that. Growing up in business, my grandfather used to say, business is business, bullshit's bullshit. Like we can be best friends outside of these doors, but in these doors, we need to handle things at a certain level that's different than what we would if we are maintaining a relationship. And I remember that from when I was like in junior high. And I remember what that meant. And I think that served me super well in life, is to be able to identify that there are times that we have to be able to take the emotional response out of the situation in order to make the right business decision or financial decision, whatever the case may be.
And you'll learn that every single quarter when you have a lot of employees.
Yeah.
And the term that I've learned from my HR consultant is, this no longer serves the business.
Yeah.
Those hard conversations,
Yeah.
this no longer serves the business, and not having any shame in that.
Yeah.
Because what are you saying yes to, which prohibits the yes to the other thing? If I say yes to this employee, I'm not giving another employee a chance.
Right.
Or multiple employees if we grow. So yeah, it's a good perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you identify a time that you made a decision, kind of a trade-off, for the sake of the business, that maybe had a pretty big impact on other aspects of your life, either personally?
A trade-off. I mean, I have pretty strict boundaries with my family, and so that constrains certain decisions, and at times that feels like, I missed an opportunity. But I think that having prioritization around what matters in your life is really, really important. It's really important for the endurance, for the long game. Like, if you want to be in business a long time, you have to have these boundaries on certain decisions so that you don't look back and go, wow, I made millions of dollars, but my kids hate me. or my wife's gone, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Those are things for me personally. But I've had to contend with that, knowing that I didn't go to that conference and probably missed out on trying to pitch and get that deal, but I did see my son's soccer game. And at the final analysis of my life, what am I going to remember? What's going to matter to me? So those are hard things. They don't get easier, but I think, well, no, they do get easier, I think, as time goes on, but they're never easy.
Yeah, for sure. Is there something that you can identify that is maybe even surprising to you that actually moves the needle in your business today?
Letting people be the best version of themselves. So we hire a lot of people out of the state penitentiary system. We do that because these people oftentimes have never been told they amount to anything. And when you tell someone they amount to something, and then you give them a job where at the end of the day they've produced a product that helps an animal or a human, you'll be completely floored about the output, about the leadership, about what things they'll invent. I just had an employee who fits this mold, and he came to me recently and said, hey, we need I'm not a machinist, he is. I need a 6-axis CNC lathe. I said, why? He's like, because we can make this round part. I said, who cares? He goes, well, because we can make them for 50 cents and sell them for $10. I said, let's buy it. And like, I've never would have seen that, but, yeah. And he wouldn't have gotten the job with most people because he would have failed the background check.
Right.
So I think that's something that it never ceases to amaze me. And I'm in a business that allows for that. I understand not every business would allow for these types of employees to have a second chance, but I really love that, and I'm constantly amazed at what happens.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there advice that you give now in the level of business that you're in that you would have never taken early on in your career?
Pay yourself first. Yeah, I think that's advice I always heard. And then coming up in the LA Silicon Beach area, it's just grind, hustle, bootstrap, and you kind of mix that with personal wellness and financial health. Right. I think a business is there to support you financially, so pay yourself. And don't be ashamed of it, and be thoughtful about it, because you can take that the other direction and pay yourself really well, and then the business has no cash. But I think I did the thing early on where I'm like, I'm fine going to Costco and living off samples. And, I'm fine. I'll be fine. And then realizing, like, I'm losing business because people are I'm showing up in, raggedy clothes, and, because I'm not taking any money out of the business. I was just too frugal. So I think paying yourself so that you can embody the identity that you need to embody to elevate is really important, especially early on.
Yeah, great advice. Is there a problem that you are actively working on?
The problem that I'm actively working on is I'm trying to, in 2025, my opening statement for the year is this is the year we're going to embrace AI in all areas of our business. We're not going to be afraid of it. We're going to co-work with it. We're going to invite it to the table for dinner. We're going to do so thoughtfully, but we're going to figure out how do we maximize our output with these new tools. And so that is a minute by minute problem to be solved. I'll say that right now, and what I've seen in the last 90 days is probably the most incredible thing I've ever seen with the agentic sort of movement that's happening. Maybe some of you have heard of the OpenClaw or the Claude bots. We've completely rebuilt our ERP in the last 90 days. We've created a tool that replaced a $250,000 a year job, which is a regulatory sort of algo watchtower that watches our quality system. I could get very technical here, but we're regulated under ISO 13485, MDSAP, MDR. So there's a lot of things that we have to do in terms of post-market surveillance, and it requires a lot of time, energy, and effort. So we've built agents to do that for us that basically elevate things that are risky and that we need to do a gap analysis on, where normally that would be a 20, 30, 40 person team. And so I just think that this is such an amazing time to be alive. And it's amazing that you can build software and have a legit business, and you might only have 100 customers globally, but because it's so cheap and you can build it so efficiently, you can build these very niche businesses. And obviously building horse ventilators, I'm all about niche businesses.
We actually used one of the pictures at the EDC board meeting of talking about startup sessions. And you should have seen the look on the faces of the board members when they were like, why is there a gorilla on the table? So
Well,
it was pretty entertaining.
Gorillas, elephants, zebras. I mean, it's incredible.
It's fascinating.
I was just sharing, I travel a lot to the Middle East because there's a lot of Arabian horses.
Usually.
There's a bit of a pause right now on that. Racing horses and racing camels. And it's pretty amazing to see how the rest of the world treats these animals with so much respect and honor. And it's very niche, but you can do some crazy. If you want more crazy pictures, we ventilated dolphins, by the way.
Wow.
Tusko the elephant, it has lived. He had an infected tusk, so we retrofitted our ventilators to do a mega animal.
Is that Oregon? Is that?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
Oregon State Zoo.
Oregon State Zoo.
So
yeah.
Tusko was able
Oregon.
to be put down because we daisy chained a bunch of mallards together to get the pressure right. But
crazy.
yeah, we've got some even crazier pictures than gorillas.
Good. We'll use them all. We'll use them all when we're telling the stories. So I have one more question, and then we're going to open it up to all of you to ask questions of Joshua. What would be one thing that you would say to the founders in the room if there's those of us here that are feeling just behind in the journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now the ability to, if you're like, learn how to learn. That's what I would say. Like, and adopt this mindset of abundance and abundant through information and learning, because information is so accessible. And with AI, like, you can have it curated to your exact specific situation. So teach me the top 10 financial concepts that Fortune 500 CFOs use for my salt cave, right? Like, and the AI will do that. Like, it'll say, like, these are the things you should look at, and these are the financial models, and this is your monthly spreadsheet that you should create. So learn how to learn and welcome that into the areas of your business that you might not think are going to create a lot of impact, but you'll be surprised.
Yeah, amazing. All right. It's up to you guys. What questions do you have for Joshua?
So as someone who uses AI a lot in your company, and you also just said you have to learn how to learn, like, a lot of, you guys are adults who have gone to school and been able to learn. Do you think there could be a big line that gets overcrossed when you let AI do the learning for you and kind of not use your brain as much?
Well, I don't know if I'm not sure if I believe that AI can do learning for me, because I'm the only one that can learn. If I let AI think for me, that's very dangerous. So, and I think that is the danger of AI in our society, is people are not thinking critically with these tools. They're not perfect. There's plenty of times where, because of my experience and education, I can look and say, well, that number is not quite right. How did you get that number? And okay, that wasn't a wrong approach, but it's the wrong way I would approach it. And then we get to tune it up a bit more. So I think the important thing is keep that critical thinking hat on and try to 10x your critical thinking. Like, read books on critical thinking. That's what I'm doing. Like, how do I become a better critical thinker? Because then you can use AI in a really powerful way. But if you're just like, give me XYZ output, copy, paste, like, that's sloppy. And that's not going to create the benefit that I'm talking about. So I think that's a really key mindset to adopt when using these tools.
So what kind of resistance to change did you experience in the medical device industry?
In any particular category? Because there's plenty of it.
Well, I guess the reason I ask is because in the industry that I work with as well, electricity, it's, sort of old, and people are resistant to change. So I'm wondering if there's similar challenges, and if so, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most resistance I've experienced is from my employees, because they're worried about their jobs being taken by it. Yeah. But if you're talking about like the industry as a whole, I think the industry as a whole in medical is, they're not even really aware of what's happening. and I'm not utilizing AI. Like, AI is not performing an audit for me, for instance. So we get audited by the FDA. That's not happening. But the AI is helping us get ready for the audit. So I think that I think what's happening though is the generation that's running these regulatory bodies is getting younger. And I think they're adopting these tools faster because they understand that if we can create a tighter regulatory cycle, then we can get more innovation in the marketplace, which ultimately benefits more people. So early on, it was hard to have conversations. And the way that I got conversations started was showing them how fast we got our technical document ready, the quality at which the technical document came in terms of its first review. And they go, how? And then that created the opportunity to have the conversation. So it was sort of leading by example and drinking our own Kool-Aid in a sense, like letting it work in our business. And then they go, well, a team of 14, like the output you just had should have been a team of 60. How did you do that? And then there's the opportunity to really get their ear.
What was, when you acquired the company, what would you say were the biggest challenges you faced, and the things that you needed to change and the challenges that were part of that?
Yeah, big thing when it comes to buying companies is paying attention to the culture of the company that you're buying. So we do a lot of due diligence. It's easy, in a sense, to do due diligence financially with sales contracts and the books and those sort of things. It's harder to look at what's this culture and how resistant to change is the culture. And so those are the most challenging things. And it really just requires a lot of leaning in from the leadership and storytelling, casting vision, being very clear about vision, being very consistent. I was told by a mentor, and this was in a sales context, that people do business with people they know, they like, and they trust, right? But employees are the same. Like, they want to know you, like you, and trust you as well. So if you want to build good rapport, what are the things that you can do as a new owner when you acquire to get to know them, get them to like you, get you to trust you? Trust is, in my opinion, doing what you say you're going to do. That builds a lot of trust. And getting to know and liking people, it's simple. Every Thursday we have a barbecue, we cook hot dogs, we break bread together, the front office, the production floor, the warehouse, we're all there together. And we tell stories, and it has nothing to do with business. It's just we're all humans, we all have to eat. And that's built an amazing culture in our business. And so when we took over the next business, and we're in the process of potentially, we have 3 active deals right now, that'll be something that I do with them as well. It's a little bit harder because they're going to be in a different place, but I really believe in sharing meals together. I think it's undervalued in terms of the impact it can have in a business.
Hey, Josh, it seems like you kind of fell in love with business at a young age and not necessarily a field. And so it seems like you've dabbled and jumped into lots of different fields. What were some of the maybe fears or roadblocks that you had to overcome to be able to step into areas that you may, you knew the business aspect, but also had to learn the field?
Yeah. Well, it's just you have a feeling of like a tidal wave when you jump into a new industry. And I think the most important thing I've learned, that fear is just an indication that you're in that phase of learning where you're consciously incompetent. You just realize that you don't know anything, right? And then you slowly over time go into conscious competence, and then unconscious competence, where you get to be a natural at it. So I think just embracing that process and spending the time to have the conversations with the experts. I'm in an industry which there's a lot of people who are older. There's not a lot of young people in medical device. They're going into AI. They're going into the other kind of sexy industries. But the opportunity there is everyone wants to have a legacy impact. Everyone wants to share what their 30, 40-year career has equated to. And so I leveraged that. I asked a lot of people to become on as advisors. We do a number of conferences a year. In ESCRS is one that moves around, but it's always in a beautiful European city. And we do something called the Curry Club, where we go out and have curry at an Indian restaurant and just share war stories. And so it's me, my brother, and my younger part of my team asking the people who've been in the industry 30, 40 years what they wish they would have known when they were our age. What's really fascinating is we've had some of these curry sessions where they're like, can we sign NDAs? because the person at the end of the table is my competition, but he wants to share something, you know? So again, coming back to the table, like, don't undervalue a meal. Yeah.
You're someone who can recognize unconventional value. Do you have any specific practices that you use to recognize cross-domain wisdom?
Long walks with my dog. Yeah. I think there's a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a great book. There's another one by Shane Parrish, Thinking Clear, or Thinking Clear. Both of those are kind of two sides of the same coin. One of them's more pragmatic, one of them's more philosophical. But I think it's really important to try and expose yourself to as many things that are working in as many industries as you can, and then back off and see what bubbles up and see, okay, I see this pattern over here, and it doesn't exist over here. That's odd, right? I'll give you an example. So when I was in web development, the learning management system, we had a tendency to work with like all of the shadiest internet marketers on the planet. Like you name them, I've probably worked with them. I probably built their technology, right? Like these are like the carnival, like top hat, like come see my stuff, right? But man, they sold a lot of stuff. You know, it's like, what are they doing? And a lot of it was a funnel system and lead generation and lead magnets and all of these different things. You pop into horse ventilators, there's none of that, right? None of that. And so we started asking ourselves the question, like, what would that look like in a non sort of hustly sort of way? And it happened to be support videos. Support videos, like how do you maintain your Mallard? How do you clean the Mallard? How do you repair the gasket? And I understood, because I was close enough to the customer a couple years in, that these guys were like repairing these in the middle of a cornfield. You know, like they're laying down a horse and they're rolling this out of the back of the pickup and like the gasket's broke. Like they're gonna buy the gasket from me, like, and I want them to buy the gasket because I get good GP. Like, let me help them install it, right? Like, let's get that out there. And so all it required was an email sign up. Now we've even removed that, actually. Like, we don't even need that. And just the inbound relational equity that's created. Now we have this massive list where it's like, hey, we thought it, my little brother runs Mallard really for me. He's like, why don't we create a preventative maintenance kit? It's just like a little box with all the things that you need. And like they can just buy them and have them in the truck whenever they need it. I'm like, great idea. There's a new product, boom. And we sell a ton of those. Like we sell just all the time, like these little things that we've figured out how to create because we're watching for patterns. So yeah, and I think again, like I know AI is kind of a buzzword, but like utilize it for that. Like, hey, I see this industry. What is working in this industry that I could apply in my industry? Like let that be a starting point for you, and then go on a long walk and see what bubbles up.
Other questions?
I have a question. So during COVID, when all the ventilators and all of that, there's all these grants for all the ventilators, and I mean, were you guys able to utilize like that side of the market, even though you guys are doing animals?
I bought the business in 2021. I missed that.
Oh, you missed it.
I did. You know what's crazy is our small animal ventilator in the early 90s had a 510K clearance to be used in humans. The old owners passed up a large government contract because they just didn't have the energy to go after it. So it was an opportunity for them. But unfortunately, like by the time I showed up, I still got all the wonderful supply chain issues, but I didn't get the demand from COVID. So.
Are the vets, are they the ones that are intubating these animals, or is there like large animal anesthesiologists?
Both.
Oh, there is?
Yeah. The large animal anesthesiology community is very tight-knit globally, and you can go to school to get that sort of designation. But veterinarians are incredible. Like, they are so smart. They are so industrious. And I would say, I can't speak to companion animals because I don't have as much exposure to them, but if it's a large animal or a veterinarian who's in a zoo, they're going to be able to do anything. It's amazing. Yeah.
I have two questions. Can you talk about who your competitors are and also how you stack up market share wise? Maybe just on the ventilators, just kind of curious, like the reach and.
So our business, Mallard represents 10% of our overall business. So a lot of our business is on the human side, but I'll just kind of stay on the Mallard side. In terms of Mallard, we are the gold standard. We're the Cadillac of the large animal anesthesia machines. We're known for quality. A lot of times when we sell a Mallard, it'll stay in service for 20 to 25 years. So we're still working on machines from 1995. Not great for reoccurring income, but great for the brand. In terms of our competitors, one of the things that COVID was helpful with is that it knocked out of a lot of our competition. There was one Venturi valve manufacturer in Southern California that went out of business, and that's a critical part that creates pressure in the system to ventilate these larger animals. No one could figure out where to get the Venturi, but my partner, who's a brilliant engineer, reverse engineered it, and we bought an industrial 3D printer called a Markforged that has a very special filament called Onyx, and we 3D print those valves. So we looked at it as, that's not a end of the road for us. Like, we could machine them, but there's a lot of labor in that. And instead we chose to 3D print it. And those 3D printers are not just like a normal 3D printer, they're used to print like automotive parts, airplane parts. So that basically took the competition down to two places. One of them folded last year, and then the last one changed hands to the employees, and they have no interest to compete with us. So yeah, we're kind of in a monopoly now.
Watch out. I know you're a voracious reader. Give us, 2, 3 books that you would say anybody in this room would benefit from reading on a business side of things.
Yeah, I think Work the System by Sam Carpenter is a great book on SOPs and processes. I think for a lot of people who aren't in manufacturing, I've just witnessed that having standardized processes and procedures is undervalued. I think it's actually the key to freedom in a business. And it's also the antidote to figuring out, like, I'm the only one who can do certain things a certain way. It's like, yeah, we'll try and make a procedure and see if someone else can do it. And create a procedure on how to create procedures so you unlock other people to create procedures. Like, that's the juice of that book, is the meta procedure. So that's a really impactful book. I think the Ego series, The Ego is the Enemy, Obstacle is the Way, and Silence is the Key from Ryan Holiday are books I read every year just to kind of tune myself back up into the concepts of stoicism that he I think distills in those books. That's just good for leadership. Man, there's so many other ones. You could, in terms of marketing and sales, I think Influence by Robert Cialdini is a great book that I go back to. That's one of those books that you could read it all the way through and get a lot. I just find that I like pick a chapter out depending on what I'm trying to do. Those would be some of the ones that I think have been most impactful. They're evergreen books. That's what I would say.
I have another one. You mentioned earlier that you didn't want to go into like venture capitalism because just your love for people. Where did you develop that love for people, and also how have you just continued the fight for that instead of going for the dollar? And I guess the third aspect of it of how are you and you've mentioned a little bit with the dinners, but creating that in your companies.
Yeah, I think you have to have a core values for your life, core values for your business. But just to answer your first part of your question about people, I was just raised in a household where people were valued. My parents were both educators, so my mom was a first grade teacher, my dad was a college professor, and they just loved their students. They loved the communities that they were teaching in. So I think I just picked up on that. And then both of the early companies, Apple and Starbucks, had that as part of their culture early on. They valued the individual, and they valued the individual expression that person brought into the business. So I think I saw the benefits to that early on. So it's stuck with me that, and I think as you go on the journey of life and you're in businesses where you feel like a cog in a machine, you're like, I could give so much more output, but why? Yeah. Like, I'm not going to get valued for it. So I've been on the other end of that, realizing like that mentality, like as much as I want to have a character that just pushes it for everyone that I've ever worked with, but some of those jobs, those soul-sucking jobs, it was hard to do that. So now as a business owner, I remind myself, don't be that guy, and create the environment for people to thrive. So having, our core values are quality above all else. Like you can't have a medical device manufacturing company without quality. Like it doesn't work. So everything has to flow behind that. We do the right thing even when the wrong thing is perfectly legal and acceptable to do. We have a can-do attitude. We're continuously learning, growing, and improving. And we are respectful, direct, and transparent in our communication. So when it comes to, out of all of those, they're all very important, but I think being respectful, direct, and transparent in communication, from the person who's packing the boxes all the way up to me, who's the CEO, that's a very people-loving core value. And you get some weird stories. Some weird things happen, but you got to take it and embrace it, and you'll see some incredible things happen. Yeah.
We have time for one more question. Okay, we'll do 2 more questions.
Oh. Let's say you're taking over a company that has like a toxic work environment already, where you can't just go and have a dinner because the people already hate each other, they see their coworkers as enemies. How could you rebuild that work culture and environment?
I'd force them to have dinner.
Okay.
I would start there regardless of how they felt. If they walked out, so be it. They weren't going to be a part of their future anyway. So no real loss in that. You embrace the suck in those situations. You let people vent. California's tough. There's a lot of HR to be mindful of in those situations. But you go in tuned up. I think anyone who knows Brooke from Clarity HR, she's amazing. She is like part of my team. She helps tune me up for hard situations. I would have someone like that who's like, this is what you're going to walk into. These are the things you can say. These are the things you can't say. But really try and get people to off gas. Because the longer they hold it in, the longer that culture is going to be bad. So the more that they can off gas, the better. And you'll start to hear solutions in that. They'll say, if it was only this way, it's like, note that, right? Or if I could only do that, it's like, note that. Why can't they do that? Is that a system, process, procedure? Is it a management structure? What's causing that? If you align with the value that they're talking about. So I think listening is probably the biggest skill to have when things are really, really toxic.
You mentioned being able to hire people that might not have opportunity to work other places because of their history.
Yeah.
Is that something that was in place before you were connected to the company, or did you implement that afterwards?
I implemented that afterwards. It was a single employee that turned me on to the idea. So one of my employees came in and basically said, I lied to you on my application. Well, he didn't say that. He goes, I didn't check that box. I said, what box? I said, I have a criminal background. I'm ashamed of it. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you straight on, but I really want this job. And I'm like, amazing. Like, you didn't lie to me. Like, let's try it out. And he turned out to be a rocket ship. And then everyone since then, like, has been a rocket ship. I think there's a balance to that, though. And I say the state penitentiary system, not maximum security prison, right? There's layers to this game, right? So don't think like, hey, like there's definitely boundaries on that too. But a lot of people didn't have parents. They were in a tough spot in life. No one's told them they're worth anything. They've only just heard from their family and their community that they were worth nothing. That's a diamond in the rough. That's the thing that I really focus in on.
Last.
So how did you connect with them? Like, did you go through parole, or did you know?
I have since then. There's actually a second chance program that the state does, and there's some tax incentives too, which the first 5 that I hired, I didn't even take advantage of it because I didn't know it existed. But if you do decide to go down that road, it's a nice little tax incentive. So the state wants this to happen. And then we have other groups in town like the Smart Center, Shasta College. They will kind of pre-filter because there is a law now that was passed in the recent years where I think it's ban the box. So years back you could have, do you have a conviction? Now you can't have that. Or if you do, like, you're exposing yourself to liability. So be careful with it. You can get that question answered though if they make it through the interview process and you go to a background check because you're going to learn about it. So that's when you can engage now. So, and that's not, to me, that's not a green light or red light, it's a yellow light. It's just have a conversation. But I think that the most productive place to have let's say a funnel in from that would just be connecting with the state penitentiary system. I don't remember the name, but it's like the exit program or something like that. So when they get out, they're trying to place them in a job. And a lot of those jobs are really, in my opinion, reinforcing a bad identity. It's jobs that no one else wants. And so, yeah, there's definitely resources to get connected. Highly recommend them too. It's been a good experience.
Yeah, you see that even like just nationally. We see such a shift even on federal through SBA resources and stuff where previously incarcerated used to be absolute elimination from resources. And they no longer, as of I think literally the last 18 months, no longer have that as a requirement for them. So amazing.
One other comment on that, just because I think it's really interesting, but there are, I think it's the one in the High Sierras, they have a lot of job training that happens in the penitentiary for specific things that are relevant to me, like warehousing. They do a lot of logistics for the other prisons. So if you have a job description, you can actually work with them to say, like, which group is training for some of the base skills that I might benefit from. And that's been really helpful.
Yeah, amazing. Joshua, thank you so much for spending your time with us tonight. I have a very, very small